Backlash in the rearview mirror. King of the Ring is coming right up from Saudi Arabia, from international to international. Let me tell you, the WWE wrestlers are getting their flight miles for sure when it comes to that. So they're back in the United States, but it won't be long before they're even further away into the Europe, Asian continent. And quick look at the King of the Ring tournament that already got underway. What do you make of these injuries we already have? Xavier Woods, Drew McIntyre, Bobby Lashley, Asuka, all scheduled to be in the King and Queen of the Ring. All were pulled from it, including Bobby Lashley most recently. What do you make of, are these injuries all legit, medically not, or are they part of greater stories like we see with Drew McIntyre?
I would say a little bit of both. I think it's a mixed bag. I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but I do think that's the right answer. I do think specifically Drew McIntyre, I do think is definitely – I think he's injured, but I don't think it's to the extent where he couldn't wrestle because he's talked about, like, I can go. I think it's more to build up that SummerSlam matchup with CM Punk. The other competitors, in particular, like a Bobby Lashley, I feel like he's going to go if he can go, and I feel like it's a legit injury. Asuka, I heard she's nicked up a little bit too, so that doesn't surprise me. I will say though, how it affects the King and the Queen, the King of the Ring and the Queen of the Ring, I don't think it makes any changes on who is going to win because I don't think any of those names were going to win. That's just my take on it. I mean, I don't have the card the names in front of me, but
I don't know who Drew McIntyre was scheduled to face. I know Bobby Lashley was scheduled to face Tama Tonga, and with obviously knowing about the bloodline right now, I'm going to guess Tama Tonga was going to, by any means necessary, move on to round 2. We got some round 1 matchups that are pretty good for SmackDown, I believe. AJ Styles and Randy Orton. That should probably take the same spot as what we saw in Raw with Gunther and Sheamus going 21 minutes in their first round main event match. Ilya Dragunov has moved on. Jey Uso has moved on, which was actually a little bit surprising because of the fact that, you wonder, this is kind of treated to give people a push. Quickly, though, with the format of the King and Queen of the Ring, one thing I like that I've seen a few people find some umbrage with when it comes to the tournament format, and they talked obviously because Raw is a 3-hour show, but I think both the women's and the men's tournament are going to feature some matches in the first round at upcoming weekend house shows this upcoming weekend, and I'm all for that. I'm all for house shows having matches that are important, having a match on the card that is going to bleed over into television.
Let's be honest, though. Let's be honest. Like, the matches that they're probably going to have at the house shows, which, again, I don't have the house shows.
It's a tournament match nonetheless. It's something they're going to have to mention on
TV. It's going to be squash matches they don't want to put on TV. I feel like a Bianca Belair and Candice LeRae, like, I feel like something like that. Like, I'm just saying, like, a match like that where I consider that more of a squash, I feel like I feel like Bianca's just going to run over her. And then the same thing with Jade Cargill and Piper Niven. Like those type of like matchups, those to me are like, those are perfect for house shows. Like a Naomi and Nia Jax, because of obviously the family ties and how both Naomi and Nia Jax, how great of competitors they are. Like, that's going to be a match where you're going to want to see on TV.
I think, to be honest with the ones you just mentioned, though, I think they're going to be on SmackDown. I think I don't know what the quote unquote squash match is, but I think like a match that's going to be at the house show on the men's side of thing, I think it's going to be Baron Corbin and Carmelo Hayes or LA Knight and Santos Escobar. I imagine AJ Styles and Randy Orton's on SmackDown.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm not surprised by that though, because like on the men's side, yeah, I like Carmelo Hayes, but I think it's a predictable finish where Carmelo Hayes is going to be Baron Corbin.
True, but I guess the idea is that the house show is going to have something on it that is a part of the overall story arc of WWE.
And I guess me being devil's advocate again, I think it's more so, and that's what I got. That's me. I think with the house shows, I think you're not going. It's not one of those like, oh my God, we're going to get – I'm just looking – I pull up the card here. Like, we're not going to get AJ Styles and Randy Orton because WWE is going to want that on TV. You know what I mean? Like I get it, though. I get that they're carrying the story onto live events, which would actually make me want to go to these shows more often. Because
again, it has something that whatever happens at it is going to be mentioned on Raw and SmackDown. It's going to be a part of the greater story arc of the King of the Ring, right? So it's essentially something that matters. It's a match in which the winner or the loser will, whether, whatever, it's going to be documented. Most matches at house shows are even in WWE world, right? Not that well documented. It's like they never happened. They don't matter. Yeah. Wins and losses, nobody even knows this occurred, right? But this is something that'll be on the Wikipedia page for the King and Queen of the Ring as a match that happened, the time of the match, so essentially it'll be part of the tournament. So you're going to see something that this guy maybe might win King of the Ring, and if it wasn't for his win at this house show, you know what I mean, that wouldn't happen, right? Because
I'll say this on the King of the Ring and the Queen of the Ring side, just looking at the bracket, like we mentioned the injuries in the beginning here. Here's the thing. Gunther's probably winning King of the Ring. I think that's pretty much, in my opinion, I think that's going to happen. And then on the women's side, I mean, I would be surprised. I would be very surprised if a Jade Cargill does not win. That's just at this stage, like you can't knock Jade Cargill out at this point. Like for me, I think Gunther's going to win the King of the Ring, and I think Jade Cargill is going to win the Queen of the Ring. And that's why to round kind of turn back a little bit to the injuries. That's why it doesn't have an impact on the brackets, because you're not losing the ones that I thought would win.
As they're trying to amplify up this pay-per-view and bring it back, as they tried last year, but then switch at the last minute for some reason. One little thing that I wish they were doing that they're not. So the finals of the King of the Ring and the finals of the Queen of the Ring are both going to happen at the pay-per-view, but the semifinals of both are going to happen at the Raw and SmackDowns the night before, the week before, and the night before the pay-per-view. And I think which kind of made the King of the Ring special back in the day, which I would like to see, and I don't need to see the whole tournament or anything like that, especially with men and women competing, but to see multiple matches. The idea of the original King of the Ring was similar to the Royal Rumble. It was an endurance. Like, they would have the quarterfinals on the pay-per-view, then they'd have a non-tournament match, then they'd have the semifinals, then a non-tournament match, then the finals. So it was like an endurance thing somewhat, right? Sometimes I think they would just have the semis, but a lot of times they'd have like a 8-man bracket, right? Because it's essentially one night King of the Ring, and I understand they had qualifying matches.
Give me semifinal. Give me the
semifinal and then the final. That's what I would like. It's a shame because the final's easy. That's just one match. That doesn't feel like the culmination necessarily, right? And that doesn't feel like an endurance. But the semifinal is that repeat, right? It's what we're used to. It's that Mick Foley coming out more than one time, or that Kurt Angle coming out more than one time.
And by the way,
that endurance in one card, starting out the night as just one of 8 and then being the number 1 before the night's out. It's like that NCAA tournament thing. We start on Monday with 64 teams, and by next Monday, it's all different. Like that's kind of the thing in that short period of time, and that endurance about like watching a pay-per-view. And I remember buying King of the Ring back in the day with 8 people on the card and going, I have no idea. And then in 3 hours, one of those guys wins 3 matches and is like a big, huge star, like went from winning none to 3 all in 3 hours.
And here's the thing, though.
Elevated.
With the King and the Queen format, the way it is, if you did the semis for King and Queen, and obviously the finals all on the same show, you're going to get a total of 6 matches, which is perfect for a pay-per-view because we just did 5 at Backlash. So you're going to get 2 semifinals matches. You're going to get so on each. So there's 4.
And obviously they wouldn't be that long, right? They wouldn't be like what we used to.
6 matches. You can make this a Queen and the King of the Ring, like just like the card. Like just make that the card. And then we're good. I think everybody goes home happy.
I think you make and then like between maybe some of the tournament matches, right? You could throw in like the Intercontinental title or Becky Lynch and Liv Morgan, which we are getting. So those 6 matches plus these 2 championship matches, and there's a full pay-per-view card, right? And then, like I said, sandwich them in between the semifinals. And actually, it's easy because we have the women's and the men's going on, so you wouldn't necessarily have to have like 2 men's matches back-to-back where it's like Gunther winning one and then going right into another match. You could have Gunther win and then break, and then the women's semifinals, then break, then the men's finals, then break, then the women's finals. Yeah, go back and forth. Go from women's match to men's match to women's match to men's match. But it's like the idea of like that's the whole reason this tournament was founded to begin with. A tournament going on over weeks and weeks and weeks is very different because it doesn't have that endurance part of it. It's it's mostly a Raw and SmackDown tournament than it is a King and Queen of the Ring tournament because there's only one match happening at the pay-per-view. The tournament is happening on Raw, right? So I think which makes this a better tournament. It's like the Royal Rumble, right? We don't have the first 55 minutes of the Royal Rumble occur on Raw and SmackDown, and then the pay-per-view itself is just the final 2, right? The whole thing from 1 to 30, everybody is all on the one card. We start off with all 30 and we get down to 1 in one single night.
Real quick.
Same idea.
I got to ask you because I gave you my favorites. I'm going to give you my dark horses. So I'm going to give you two other names to look out for: one men's, one women's, and they're both former NXT, now recent call ups. I think Ilya Dragunov is going to be a dark horse to watch out for, and I do think Lyra Valkyria is another name to look out for as dark horses. I wouldn't be surprised to see them make it pretty deep in the tournament. Who are your favorites, and then two dark horses?
All right, I'm gonna go with, like you said, I can't bet against Jade Cargill. But I mean, Naomi, right? She's still in the women's title picture a lot. Bianca Belair, it's hard to bet against her. That's why I think, like Bianca versus Jade Cargill in the semifinals on a pay-per-view, or Ilya Dragunov versus Gunther in the semifinals on the pay-per-view. I mean, those are matches I want to see, and that would be what sells this pay-per-view great, because you would advertise those matches as just what we already know, right? And then obviously the finals themselves.
Yeah.
But yeah, Bianca Belair and Jade Cargill, because of their friendship and obviously being the current tag team champions, that'd be awesome to see that semifinal match on the pay-per-view. I imagine we might see that semifinal match on the SmackDown the night before in Jeddah. But I think that would obviously be cool to see, on the pay-per-view. We start off with, I don't know who to pick. And then, like, now when we get down to the championship, there's no dark horse really, right? It's one or the other, right? So you don't really get that mixed bag where I could be way off, right? Like in the Royal Rumble, you can be way off, in your pick, because there's so many people involved. You could pick somebody who gets eliminated 5 minutes in. So I think Bianca Belair is my dark horse. Jade Cargill is my favorite. Gunther was announcing himself for this like before WrestleMania. Yeah. So I can't see him not winning. I do also say, and I've said this before quickly, we should have some weight to this. I think whoever wins this should be like in the title picture, should get a shot, like a money in the bank style briefcase to go to SummerSlam with, to be the number one contender for the belt of their choosing at an upcoming pay-per-view, whether it's Money in the Bank or SummerSlam or whatever, to give that some weight. Which would, because Gunther winning, I imagine he's going to win, but unfortunately right now it doesn't have any weight, so that doesn't mean it's going to be Gunther and Cody at SummerSlam based on him winning King of the Ring, which I wish it was.